Have you ever felt like the world was watching you, even when no one was there? You wake up and before your feet even hit the floor, you're already on stage. Performing. For whom? For the eyes you've imagined. The ones you gave permission to. Rule you. You wear your clothes like armor, but not for warmth, only for approval. You speak with caution, not clarity. You smile when you want to scream. And somewhere along the way, you stopped living for yourself. This is the quiet torment no one sees, being judged not by others, but by the version of yourself you created for their comfort. You live in a prison made of eyes, some real, most imagined, and in that prison you shrink, not because you are small, but because you've been taught that too much light makes people uncomfortable. Nietzsche once wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. And you've been overwhelmed. Your fire, dimmed for fear of burning bridges. Your voice, watered down to be digestible. You've become fluent in pleasing, a master at disappearing into what others find acceptable. But what if I told you this? Judgment is just a mirror, and the reflection isn't even yours. It's a distorted echo of their fears, their rules, their discomfort projected onto your skin. And every time you conform, you reinforce a lie that your truth is dangerous. But here's the turning point. You are not here to be measured. You are not an equation to be solved. You are a key, force to be revealed. The first chain is awareness, and now on you've seen it. You weren't born afraid of being too loud, too much, too different. You became that way. Somewhere in your early years, you learned a quiet truth. Love had terms. Be good. Be polite, don't cry too much, don't want too much. Approval became currency, and you, still soft, still forming, learned to trade pieces of yourself just to feel safe. That's how the first mask was born. It wasn't malicious, it was survival. You noticed the difference between the moments you were praised and the ones when you were punished with silence, so you adjusted. Smiled when you were sad, nodded when you didn't understand, and every time you betrayed your own impulse for the sake of peace, you buried a piece of your real self deeper into shadow. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we craft to meet the world's gaze without being destroyed by it. But over time, the mask hardens. It stops being a tool and becomes your identity. You forget who you were before the performance began. People see the agreeable one, the helpful one, but behind closed doors, you're exhausted, conflicted, numb. Because wearing a mask all day doesn't just hide your pain, it creates it. And here's the wound that most never see. You've mistaken your mask for your worth. You think if you stop pleasing, you'll stop mattering. But the truth, if they only love the mask, then they've never loved you. The child adapted out of necessity, but the adult must choose keep the mask or meet themselves again. And if you're ready, the next layer of truth is waiting. At first, you noticed the looks, the way silence filled a room after you spoke your truth, the subtle tightening of their faces when you didn't fit the script. And then, you adjusted, not just your words, but your thoughts, your desires, even your instincts. Slowly, their perception of you became more important than your perception of yourself. You started second-guessing the voice inside, asking it to wait while you checked for approval. You stopped trusting the impulse and started waiting for permission. Over time, you couldn't tell where you ended and they began. This is how the psychological prison forms. You become so fluent in managing others' expectations that you forget how to hear your own. Overthinking becomes your reflex. You rehearse conversations before they happen and relive them long after they end. Not because you're weak, but because you were trained to believe that being misunderstood is dangerous. Jung might call it ego armor, a protective self built on reaction, not reflection. But even armor gets heavy, and the longer you wear it, the less you move freely. Ask yourself how much of your life is a performance for an audience that doesn't even care. How much of your anxiety is just your truth trying to escape the lie? Because when perception becomes your prison, freedom feels like rebellion. But rebellion in this case is not destruction. It's remembrance of the version of you that once existed before the world told you who to be. And if you're willing to listen, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, That voice is still there. You've been called so nice your whole life. But deep down, it never felt like a compliment. Because niceness for you wasn't a choice, it was a contract. Unspoken, invisible, signed in fear. If I'm good, I'll be safe. If I don't upset them, they won't leave. If I make myself small, I won't be punished. You learned early that anger made people leave, that saying no made love feel cold. So you swallowed it. The irritation, the disappointment, the rage. And over time you became nice. Not kind nice, there's a difference. Kindness comes from strength. Niceness is born of fear. It's the fear of rejection wrapped in a smile. It's repressed fury, disguised as politeness. It's you walking on eggshells in your own life, hoping that by being everything to everyone, you'll finally be enough to someone. But that's the tragedy of the nice person. They're often the most invisible in the room, until they explode. You see, no one notices your quiet sacrifices. No one sees the war inside. They just see your calm face and think you're fine, but you're not. You're tired of apologizing for existing, of feeling guilty for having needs, of betraying yourself just to keep the peace. And here's the bitter truth. Peace bought through self-abandonment is not peace at all. It's a slow death. Your wildness, the part of you that says what it means, that dares to take up space. That part isn't wrong, it's real. And the longer you silence it, the louder your resentment grows. You weren't born to be agreeable. You were born to be authentic. And that's what we reclaim next. What if they never clap? What if the applause never comes? What if no matter how gentle you are, how polished, how selfless, how pleasing, they still don't see you? Would you disappear? Would you keep twisting yourself into shapes they might love, or would you finally stop performing and start being? This is the mirror no one wants to look into. You might never be enough for them, not because you are lacking, but because their eyes were never meant to recognize your light. You've spent years trying to earn approval like it's oxygen, thinking, if I just explain myself better, if I just become more palatable. But here's the truth that liberates and terrifies in equal measure. Some people are committed to misunderstanding you, and that is not your burden to fix. As Nietzsche once said, is it better to be misunderstood than to never be yourself at all? You've been caught in the addiction of being seen a certain way, the perfect one, the good one, the agreeable one. But every role you've played to win affection has cost you something sacred, your truth. And what if being misunderstood is the price of freedom? What if you stopped chasing their permission and started building your own approval, brick by brick from within? This is the point where the game breaks, where the illusion collapses, where winning them over is no longer the prize. Because the real victory is no longer needing to, and that silence you feared, it becomes your sanctuary. There's a version of you that never made it to the surface. It stands behind the curtain of your smile, watching, waiting. The one who spoke too loudly, wanted too much, felt too deeply. You buried it, not because it was wrong, but because someone once flinched when you showed it. Carl Jung called this the shadow. Not evil, not broken, just unlived. Everything you silenced to survive. Your anger, your sensuality, your defiance, your hunger. To Besai, you thought repressing these parts made you good, but all it did was make you halfer, and the unlived self doesn't disappear. It waits, it festers, it leaks through resentment, exhaustion, and quiet rage. You are not here to be sanitized, you are not here to be pleasing, you are here to become whole. Jung believed individuation, the journey to the true self, requires walking into the cave where your shadow lives, not to destroy it, but to retrieve the power it's guarding. Your shadow holds your voice, your boundaries, your no, your enough, your ability to stand instead of shrink. To reclaim your shadow is not rebellion, it's reintegration. You don't become someone else. You return to the one you were before the world taught you to split. So ask yourself, what part of me did I exile to be accepted? And what might happen if I invited it back? Because the most dangerous version of you is not the one they shaped. It's the one you buried. And now, it wants to come home. There's a moment that breaks everything, a quiet revolution that doesn't scream but whispers so deeply inside of you. No more. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's just truth. And suddenly, all the masks you've worn, all the roles you've played, all the ways you've twisted yourself to fit, they start to suffocate. You didn't even realize how much you were holding your breath, how much you were bending yourself just to stay small enough, nice enough, palatable enough. But one day the weight of it all becomes unbearable. The exhaustion of pretending, of smiling when you feel hollow, starts to feel more painful than the fear of being real. You reach a breaking point, and it's not a loud crash. It's the quiet crack of your own heart, giving you permission to breathe again, permission to choose yourself. Burnout, it turns out, is often the beginning of awakening. The slow erosion of your spirit, the constant sacrifice of your truth, leads you to a precipice where not choosing yourself becomes a fate too bitter to bear. And yet that first choice, the one that feels like stepping into the unknown, the one that makes you wonder if you've lost your mind, is the one that begins your liberation. It feels risky, it feels reckless, it feels like an unraveling, but it's the unraveling of everything that was never you. And soon you realize, choosing yourself wasn't the hard part. It was realizing that you were always worthy of choosing. Now, there is no turning back. There is a death that must come for you to live. The death of the version of you that was never truly yours. The one who smiled to keep the peace. The one who twisted their soul to fit into someone else's story. This is not a simple change. It is not a tidy, quiet transition. It is a funeral, not of the body, but of the false self you've carried like an invisible shroud. And with every moment of it, you feel the weight of all that pretending crumble away, piece by piece. The mask you wore for so long begins to decay, and as it breaks apart, so does everything it was built upon. The need for approval, the fear of judgment, the silent pact to stay small. Grief floods in. It aches like a wound you never knew you had. The grief of leaving behind the person you thought you were supposed to. With the grief of walking away from everything that kept you safe, even though it was killing you. But then there is liberation. With the death of that old version of you, you begin to feel your breath return, deep, unguarded, raw. The weight that once held you captive begins to lift, and in its place, a wild freedom begins to unfurl inside you. It hurts. It feels like breaking open, but that's the point. This pain is holy. It is the birth of something truer, something stronger. You are shedding what was never yours to keep, and in the process, you are finally returning to yourself. And though the grief of this transformation feels sharp, you now realize this pain is the gateway to the life you were always meant to live. Have you ever noticed how people seem to listen more when you speak less? It's as if, the less you explain yourself, the more they are forced to truly hear you. In a world that thrives on noise, there is a quiet strength in not reacting, not just in holding your tongue, but in choosing silence as a response, as a weapon. This isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about emotional detachment. It's about freeing yourself from the need to justify, to explain, to seek approval for every thought and feeling. When you stop defending yourself, you take away the power others have over you. When you stop over-explaining, you no longer invite others into your inner world, a world they have no right to enter. Silence becomes your armor, your fortress, and it is impenetrable. Jung understood this well. The true power of the self lies in the shadow, those parts of you that do not need to be seen or understood. And just as the shadow does not speak, neither should your deepest essence feel the need to constantly explain itself. You are not a story to be narrated to the world, but a force that exists beyond explanation. This is Stoic wisdom too. True power lies in non-reactivity. The less you respond to the chaos around you, the more you become the still center in the storm. And when you walk away, when you choose to leave the noise behind, that silence is not weakness. It is the loudest answer of all. It speaks louder than any defense, louder than any excuse. It declares, that you no longer seek validation from a world that never understood you, and in that silence, you hold all the power. What if I told you that the moment you start paying attention to yourself, you begin to rule your world? Because the truth is simple. What you pay attention to, you give your power to. Every moment you allow your energy to be consumed by others' opinions, by their judgments, by their needs, you are surrendering your throne. You are handing over the very currency of your life, your attention, to forces outside of yourself. But when you take that attention back, when you reclaim it and focus it inward, something shifts. The world no longer controls you. You begin to control your world. Your mind, once scattered and vulnerable to every external influence, becomes a fortress. No longer are you distracted by their opinions, their validation, their expectations. Your creativity starts to flow freely, unhindered by the noise of approval seeking. Your time becomes yours to shape, yours to use as you see fit. And your relationships, they transform as well. When you are no longer orbiting others, hoping for their approval, you become the gravity that pulls the right people toward you. No longer do you chase, you attract. Reclaiming your attention is not just a practice, it is a declaration of sovereignty. It is the moment you recognize that you are the ruler of your own mind, that your power comes not from what others think of you, but from how you choose to direct your focus. Silence becomes your armor, your fortress, and it is impenetrable. Jung understood this well. The true power of the self lies in the shadow, those parts of you that do not need to be seen or understood. And just as the shadow does not speak, neither should your deepest essence feel the need to constantly explain itself. You are not a story to be narrated to the world, but a force that exists beyond explanation. This is Stoic wisdom too. True power lies in non-reactivity. The less you respond to the chaos around you, the more you become the still center in the storm. And when you walk away, when you choose to leave the noise behind, that silence is not weakness. It is the loudest answer of all. It speaks louder than any defense, louder than any excuse. It declares that you no longer seek validation from a world that never understood you, and in that silence, you hold all the power. What if I told you that the moment you start paying attention to yourself, you begin to rule your world? Because the truth is simple. What you pay attention to, you give your power to. Every moment you allow your energy to be consumed by others' opinions, by their judgments, by their needs, you are surrendering your throne. You are handing over the very currency of your life, your attention, to forces outside of yourself. But when you take that attention back, when you reclaim it and focus it inward, something shifts. The world no longer controls you. You begin to control your world. Your mind, once scattered and vulnerable to every external influence, becomes a fortress. No longer are you distracted by their opinions, their validation, their expectations. Your creativity starts to flow freely, unhindered by the noise of approval seeking. Your time becomes yours to shape, yours to use as you see fit. And your relationships, they transform as well. When you are no longer orbiting others, hoping for their approval, you become the gravity that pulls the right people toward you. No longer do you chase, you attract. Reclaiming your attention is not just a practice. It is a declaration of sovereignty. It is the moment you recognize that you are the ruler of your own mind, that your power comes not from what others think of you, but from how you choose to direct your focus. Your attention is your throne, and the moment you sit in it, everything changes. Have you ever felt the sting of rejection and wondered, what's wrong with me? What if I told you that rejection is not a judgment of your worth, but simply a reflection of someone else's lens? We spend so much of our lives seeing no as failure, as something personal, as proof that we aren't enough. But that's not what rejection is at all. It's a mirror, a reflection of the other person's perception, their limitations, their needs. It says more about them than it does about you. Imagine a door slamming in your face. At first, you might want to scream, wondering why you weren't allowed in, why you weren't chosen. But what if that door wasn't meant for you? What if the no was simply guiding you to a different door, a better one that would open at the right moment? This is not a failure, but redirection. Rejection stops being painful when you stop internalizing it, when you see it not as a verdict, but as the universe recalibrating your path. Think of all the moments in your life when rejection pushed you toward something more fitting, something that resonated with your true self. Those moments when a job you thought you wanted turned out to be a dead end, when a relationship that felt perfect at the time was actually a trap. It's all a redirection toward your own authentic journey, toward the people, places, and opportunities that align with your essence. The moment you stop taking rejection personally, it stops having power over you. It becomes fuel, driving you forward, propelling you toward what is truly meant for you. So the next time rejection comes knocking, remember this. It's not about you. It's about where you're going next. What if I told you that boundaries are not walls, but invitations to self-respect? For so long, we've been taught that boundaries are something cold, something rigid. We're told they create distance, make us seem unapproachable, unfriendly. It doesn't shout for attention or demand a spotlight. It lives in the space between your thoughts, in the quiet hum of your energy. And here's the paradox. The more you embody that stillness, the more power you have. When you stop chasing, when you stop running after approval, you become the very thing you once sought. You don't need to hurry or compete. You become cleaner, calmer, sharper. There's an elegance in restraint, a quiet mastery that emanates from within, unseen but undeniable. You begin to walk into rooms differently, not with desperation in your eyes, but with a sense of purpose that feels almost tangible. You no longer feel like you need to prove yourself, because you already know who you are, and as you step into your own space, something shifts in the world around you. Where once you were overlooked, now you are noticed. Where once people ignored you, now they seek you out. The universe, in all its unpredictable ways, begins to respond. Not because you chased after it, but because you stopped running, and in your stillness you became a magnet for the things you always wanted. The world does not bend to force, it bends to the law of attraction, to those who are centered, to those who no longer beg for their place. Becoming unstoppable isn't about noise or speed, it's about clarity, calmness, and the quiet confidence that whatever you need, you no longer have to chase. It will come to you. After the dust settles and the masks have finally slipped away, you'll notice something strange. Some people will leave, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your authenticity is no longer a performance they can relate to. The energy you once gave them, desperate, eager, it no longer exists, and so they walk away. It's painful at first. There's a moment of empty space, a quiet ache where the familiar faces once stood. But here's the profound truth you must come to understand. The people who leave were never truly yours. They were only reflections of who you pretended to be. And as you shed your false layers, you begin to realize the people who remain, the ones who stand by you, are not here out of need or obligation, but because they see you for who you truly are. They see the real you, the raw, unfiltered version of yourself, and they choose to stay anyway. This new intimacy isn't built on performance, on impressing or trying to fit into a mold. It's grounded in truth, in mutual respect, in the deep knowing that neither of you needs to pretend. You are both allowed to be messy, to be flawed and still worthy of love. The right people, the ones who will truly stay, are not those who seek to change you, but those who help you grow. They don't need you to perform, they simply need you to be. And with them, you no longer have to wear masks, you no longer have to hide. What remains is something far more valuable: true connection. You've spent so much of your life playing small, trying to fit, to blend, to melt into the shadows of other people's expectations. But here's the truth you may not have wanted to face. The fear of disapproval was never really about them. It was about forgetting who you truly are. It was about becoming so consumed with their voices that you stopped hearing your own. You weren't born to shrink. You were born to expand, to rise. Every moment you've spent bending yourself to their wills, to their judgments, has been a moment away from your power. It was never about being liked, it was about becoming. It's time to remember that you were never meant to be invisible. You were never meant to be a mere reflection of other people's desires. This is the final truth, the final liberation. You don't need their approval, their validation, their applause. What you need is the courage to face yourself, to stand in your truth, to let go of the masks and to embrace the wildness inside of you that's always been there, waiting to break free. So hear this, once and for all, you're not here to be liked. You're here to be free, to walk your own path, to shine in your own light, to become all that you've always been, and more. And with them, you no longer have to wear masks, you no longer have to hide. What remains is something far more valuable, true connection. You've spent so much of your life playing small, trying to fit, to blend, to melt into the shadows of other people's expectations. But here's the truth you may not have wanted to face. The fear of disapproval was never really about them. It was about forgetting who you truly are. It was about becoming so consumed with their voices that you stopped hearing your own. You weren't born to shrink. You were born to expand, to rise. Every moment you've spent bending yourself to their wills, to their judgments, has been a moment away from your power. It was never about being liked, it was about becoming. It's time to remember that you were never meant to be invisible. You were never meant to be a mere reflection of other people's desires. This is the final truth, the final liberation. You don't need their approval, their validation, their applause. What you need is the courage to face yourself, to stand in your truth, to let go of the masks, and to embrace the wildness inside of you that's always been there, waiting to break free. So hear this, once and for all, you're not here to be liked. You're here to be free, to walk your own path, to shine in your own light, to become all that you've always been and more.